You are listening to 52 Ways, a podcast by Scott and Christian Milford.
This is how you love one another, love one another.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning,
afternoon,
good weekend, good day, all of those things. So welcome to the 52 Ways to Love One Another podcast. This is week 10. So this is our 10th way that we're going to that we're bringing to you how to love one another the way that Jesus loved us. So many times we talk about that as this thing that we just all know how to do as Christians. But it occurred to us that, you know what, we've never really studied exactly what that means to love one another the way he loved us. So we're on a mission to study that and try to bring it into real practical terms so that we can walk away at the end of this year understanding what that really means in our lives. And hopefully it makes a difference in our world. It brings some hope to people. It helps us to bridge some of the divide that exists in our crazy world right now.
you should ask me what I'm going to do today.
What are you going to do today, Christian?
We're going to go to St. Charles, and then we're going to play some violin. And then
Wait a
I'm going
minute.
to go watch Uncharted.
Isn't that what we did last week?
Yeah, it's apparently what we did last week.
Oh, we're recording 2 episodes in a row.
Oh, and look, I'm wearing the same
We're
shirt.
wearing the same shirts. Yes.
Yes.
Maybe we should just go shirtless.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Or like swap shirts.
I'm not sure which would be worse.
I'll be okay with swapping shirts with you. I don't think you'd be okay with it with me.
Yeah, you'd be fine. You just have like an oversized shirt on. Me,
And you would be like in a
medium
tuxedo. I don't know.
piece like
Not
Spanx.
tuxedo.
You ever heard of
No,
Spanx?
a speedo. Oh,
A
yeah.
Speedo, like a shirt Speedo.
Yeah, shirt Speedo.
That would be bad. I did lose 3 pounds this week. You impressed?
Yeah.
Yeah. Only like 30 more to go. Okay, so we're gonna get into some good stuff here today. This one's a little bit different. This one's a little bit of this isn't as much of a direct action that we can take. Last week we talked about Matthew and finding Matthews in our world that we can take a chance on. You know, somebody that we can bring in closer to us. That maybe is not the first person that we would immediately think we're going to bring in as someone that we associate with more closely, but take a chance on somebody who maybe is searching that we can connect with. And this week we're going to move on from that, and we're going to talk about something that is less actionable and more of a mindset that we can bring into situations where we are going to love one another the way that Jesus loved us. All right. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
And Christian wants to start an argument in this one.
Yeah.
So at any point in our podcast, we might hear Christian just break out some sort of argumentative statement. So I'm on guard and I'm ready for it if he does. And I want all of you to be ready as well, because boy, it could get ugly. We could throw down. Should it become a physical confrontation?
No.
Okay, that's probably a good idea.
You would win.
I would win. I don't know. You're pretty.
No,
you're pretty strong and feisty. Okay, so we are in Matthew 14, and we're going to look at verse 13. And this is where Jesus feeds the 5,000. So a very familiar story. Actually, I'm going to start in verse 15. I think it says that evening the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late." So Jesus is teaching. He's preaching to all these thousands of people, and he says it's already getting late. The disciples are telling Jesus, send the crowds home, so they can go to the villages and buy food for themselves, because they're thinking, we got thousands of people here. We got nothing to give them, and they're hungry. What are we going to do? We better send them home because it's getting late. And what did Jesus say? No, that's not necessary. You feed them. And they're like, we ain't got no food.
Yeah, you told us to not take any money.
Yeah, right. You told us only to accept hospitality as we go out into the villages, not to take money and put it in our money belt. But yet now you're telling us to go ahead and feed them. They said, we only have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And then Jesus said, bring them here. Then he told the people to sit down on the grass. Jesus took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, looked up towards heaven, blessed them. Then breaking loaves into pieces, he gave the bread to his disciples, who distributed them to the people. And then, of course, they had a whole lot left over, and everybody was full and fat and happy, and they went to sleep that night just fine. So what's the lesson to be learned here?
What was his explanation for that?
His explanation? What do you mean?
Didn't he have an explanation
What do you mean?
to the disciples? Didn't he say something like about faith?
Oh, is this like where you're being argumentative?
Yeah. But didn't he say something about that though?
I don't think so. I think that's just what we're
I thought
deducing
he
from
said
it.
something.
It says about 5,000 men were fed that day, in addition to the women and the children.
Oh.
So they fed 5,000 men plus their wives and kids. So we're talking 10 to 15 to 20,000 people that were fed. That's how many fit into where the Blues play here in St. Louis. What's it called right now? I'm blanking out on the name of our arena, but Enterprise Center. So yeah, that's how many people fit in there. That's how many people were there listening to Jesus. No microphone, mind you. I don't understand how that works, but anyway. So yeah, so there's a major lesson to be learned here. The disciples, they pushed back and said, and they just assumed, and I don't blame them. They just assumed though that there was no way that they would be able to feed all these people. And Jesus said, why do you have such little faith? Is
Yeah,
pretty much
that's what I was wondering.
yeah, and that's a similar thing. I think it might be in the next passage where, this next passage is where Jesus walks in the water. But when Peter walks in the water, it's like, why do you have such little faith? Or maybe when they were on the boat and Jesus calmed the storm, he said, why do you have such little faith? You have to. The lesson here is you have to have faith as you take these risks in loving people the way that Jesus loved us. If you don't have faith in doing it and you're just doing it because Jesus said to do it, and you're just being obedient, that's good. That's a good first step. But there's going to be so many times where you're just kind of acting on your own authority, or you're acting on your own devices or your own talents, your own limitations, and you're not allowing God to fully work through you to provide in those moments when someone's challenging you or someone's attacking you, or you need resources like the disciples do here, and you don't have them. And if you just think about your earthly limitations, then you're never going to have them. So the lesson here is as we enter into these acts of serving one another, loving one another, using the gifts of the Spirit or the fruits of the Spirit, I would say that backwards. We have to do so faithfully and trust that the Holy Spirit is going to give us the right words at the right time, or trust that God's going to provide resources for us at the right time whenever we need it as we serve the people that we're serving.
Yeah, I think missionaries are like the best example
Yeah.
of that, because they don't ever know where their next like cash is going to come from, and sometimes it doesn't. That might be God's way of saying, "Hey, I want you to be done serving in the ministry and go back to like, the United States or something like that."
Yeah. And they might perceive it that way.
Yeah.
And sometimes that might be it, but other times that's simply an opportunity for them to put their faith into action. Churches are the same way. Churches' budgets so many times look really bleak and they might think, we got to sell the building, we got to close down, we got to cut salaries, we can't continue on. But when you faithfully continue on, unless God has a different plan, he's gonna provide to allow that act of serving, act of doing ministry, to allow it to continue. I was thinking about our Honduras trips that we've taken, the medical mission trips down to Honduras that we've taken. Gotta pause that there. Are we still good? Okay. The medical mission trips that we've taken, where people oftentimes think that in order to go down to a place like that and serve the people in a country like that on a medical mission trip, that you have to be medical. And really the reality is you don't. You have to have a heart to serve, and you have to be willing to go down there and take chances based on your faith, take chances on feeling like you're not equipped to do the things that mission team is going to do, but rather just go down there anyway and do it. And if you rely only on your own abilities, then you're probably never going to sign up to go down to that mission trip. But if you trust that God's going to use you in amazing ways, and he's going to prepare you to serve those people in ways you didn't even know you were capable of, then I think you're going to be a much more capable servant.
Yeah.
I also think about years ago, I started serving in East St. Louis at the Christian Activity Center, and it's in the area that we live in. It's close to East St. Louis, and at one time it was the murder capital of the world, and my fear was
Of America.
of America. Yeah, sorry. My fear was very strong that I'm going to go down there and get shot. And if I had just relied on my own ability to overcome fear, I never would have went down there and served there. I stayed the night there at times even. And there were times where we heard gunshots outside and we had to hit the deck. And that was a little intimidating. But, when you're there serving a purpose and you're in tune with what God's doing in that work, then that faith will just allow you to overcome obstacles such as fear in those moments. Christian, anything racing through your mind? I've got a couple of things still on my mind I want to share, but anything racing through your mind?
I just don't know if the notion of you don't have enough faith, or like if you only had this amount of faith, you could transport, you could turn 5 breads into 12 basketfuls.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not saying that every time you have a shortage of water or bread, and if you just pray hard enough and have enough faith, it's suddenly going to do what Jesus did here. Like, I don't know that physically is what I'm saying, or that the physical manifestation of it in the miraculous way, the way it did here, is always going to happen. Because it might be the next day that a water truck comes and delivers more water, you know? But I think the lesson here, though, is from a mindset standpoint, as we take chances in finding Matthews, as we talked about, or take chances on loving people in ways that we're not really comfortable. Heck, even think about, introverts versus extroverts, and introverts being nervous to have conversations with groups of people, or even introducing themselves to individuals sometimes. If you walk in with an element of faith, that's empowering you and helping you to overcome those fears, you are way more likely to actually follow through on those things. And extroverts typically are a little gun shy when it comes to having real, intimate conversations, or taking the spotlight off of them and putting it on somebody else. But extroverts can overcome that by just trusting God through those conversations and waiting for the leading of the Holy Spirit to know what to say, what question to ask, etc. So there's all kinds of opportunity to use our faith as we put our faith into action and serve people. And let's not be like these disciples where our first thought is, we can't do that, we don't have enough food. Let's have our first thought be, oh, what an opportunity. Let's trust that God's going to lead us through this opportunity. We just need enough faith to take the first step. And that's Peter walking out of the boat. He just needed just enough faith to take the first step. And then Jesus will light the path from there and take over if you're willing to take that first step. So I think that's the lesson here. When you see an opportunity to love somebody, to serve somebody the way that Jesus loved and served us, all you got to do is have enough faith to take the first step. And sometimes that first step is just saying, hello. Hey, Christian.
Hey.
I don't think he's into this topic.
I woke up
he woke up at 6 o'clock to play cards. Yeah. But the first step often is all you need to do. You take that first step, and Jesus will carry you the rest of the way. So risk taking, when it comes to this idea of following Jesus's lead and loving each other, risk taking is a big part of it. And if you do it without faith or just your own human mindset, good luck. But if you do it with Jesus carrying you, like that Footprints poem, that poem, he carried you through the hard times. If you trust him enough to carry you through, that's where you're gonna end up saying that was good, and he's gonna say, well, that he's well pleased, good and faithful servant. Anything else?
Nope.
Boy, that was a quick one.
That was.
Should we stop it there?
Yeah. We should give them a break.
Give them a break and give them a short one for once.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll give them a break and make it a short one for once. Hey, share this podcast. I hope you'll like it on YouTube or on the Apple Podcast. Give us that 5-star rating. It's really huge to help us promote this thing. And I pray that we'll continue to bring some good content for all of you as you seek to do what Jesus told us is the most important thing to do, which is to love God and love others. And remember, he didn't say one was more important than the other. It's just that they're sequential. And so we're on a mission to help people figure out what that means and how to do that in our daily lives. Pray for our country, that our leaders, especially at this time when things are such a mess, our leaders will carry us through, that even if we don't agree with our leaders here nationally, that we will still support them and help them to make good decisions by using our voices appropriately out of the love that Christ has demonstrated for us. So be well, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Bye now.
This is how you love.